is Kelly.
And I'm Emma.
And this is Fanimated, an animation fan podcast where we get a chance to geek out about our favorite animated media. And today, that is, of course, the one, the only,
Fruits Basket. We made it. The train has arrived.
We did it. So, if you have heard us talk on the podcast at all about any anime, you'll know that Emma and I are extreme fans of Fruits Basket. We're extreme fans of a lot of shojo anime.
It's true.
But I think it's fair to say right off the bat, Fruits Basket is one of our absolute favorites.
Absolutely. I mean, it's definitely my favorite anime, like next to like Full Metal Alchemist, and that's high praise.
Oh yeah, Fruits Basket is in my top 5 easy of all anime of all time.
So that's why we like talk about it like every podcast we're together. Oh, did you watch Fruits Basket? Like
yes.
Remember the Kyo?
So of course, imagine our ecstatic joy when we found out that the Fruits Basket that we knew was getting a complete reboot, and here we are many years later.
Watched it several times, but now we're finally talking about it.
Yes. So Emma and I, this kind of like is strings together our entire time as roommates as well, because
That's true.
About a year ago this time, we were roommates for the first time. And we were like, oh, awesome. We can finally like watch all this anime together. And so we're like, well, we got to rewatch all of Fruits Basket, the new, show. Because again, we are mainly, can I choose a word? We are mostly talking about the 2019 Fruits Basket here.
Correct.
But anyway, so we were like, well, we've got to rewatch the show together so we can talk about it on the podcast. And it has taken us the full year
to get through, what, is there 24 episodes per season?
The first 2 seasons are like, 24, 25, and the second one is like half that.
Yeah, so like, give or take somewhere like around 60 episodes.
Yeah.
Or a little less, and it took us a year. It's fine.
It's fine. But we're here. We're on the other side of Fruits Basket glory.
Yes, it may have taken longer than expected, but we are here to geek out about it nonetheless.
We are.
We love it.
We love it so
Fruits
much.
Basket is a lifestyle. I mean, I think we're more than just extreme fans. I think we're just a little obsessed. I mean, I use references to Fruits Basket in my daily life, so if that's not normal, then yeah.
Then yeah, you can call us weirdos. It's okay.
It is okay.
Us weirdos have to stick together.
It's true.
So, if you know what Fruits Basket is, awesome. Welcome to the club. If you don't, real quick, so you know, the basic premise is that this high schooler, Toru, who is living on her own for various reasons, basically stumbles upon this family who kind of take her in so she can have somewhere to live. And this family just happens to be under a curse. They're cursed by the spirits of the Chinese zodiac. And what that means is various members of this family can turn into the animals of the Chinese zodiac. So we're talking about the dog and, the dragon and the, boar and all of that. And when they are under extreme stress or they're hugged by someone of the opposite gender, then they will turn into that animal. And that obviously provides a lot of unfortunate circumstances. And so this story follows Toru in her just journey of life and journey of her own self-discoveries and growth, but also her basically desire to break the curse and her journey meeting everyone in Soma family. So, originally, this was a manga that ran from 1998 to 2006 by Natsuki Takaya. And the original anime aired in 2001. And that was just a one season, 25 episodes.
Which we did an episode on, by the way.
Yes, please go back after you're done listening to this. You can go back and listen to episode number 15 of Fanimated.
Aww. So long ago.
So long ago. It has the old theme song. Aww. And like back when I actually did like scripted intros. I do not put that much work into it anymore. So you can go listen to our old January of 2019 episode on that. And I did today, actually, so we can compare. But yeah, so Fruits Basket was dearly beloved by both manga readers and anime watchers for this series. And then we found out it basically got the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood treatment, in which a complete reboot, you know, almost 20 years later, with basically a closer story to the manga. So this follows the manga much more closely, and which the author was very, very excited about, because the author did not like the original series.
Interesting.
Because it did not follow the manga very well. But you know, we'll do a lot of like comparison here and all of that. But first off, I also just want to give a quick like content warning, not only for what we're going to talk about, but also just for this show in general, if you haven't seen it. It is pretty dark and follows a lot of unfortunate events, mental health issues, and especially basically any kind of abuse you can think of is in this show, both physically, mentally, emotionally, verbally, etc., etc. So definitely be cautious where that is due. Tread lightly, but we, you know, it is because they tackle these dark themes well that we really, really, really love this show.
Yeah, that's a big part of what makes it so beautiful, is just that, yes, these characters are going through such dark and horrible circumstances, but it's how they overcome. So this show is like one big therapy session. So
yes,
that's something to think about when diving in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just keep it in mind. But that is to say, it's not without its jokes and goofs and gags. So,
oh yeah,
we like to say it both rips your heart into pieces and then it puts it back together again.
Somehow better than before.
Yes, exactly. So, also because we've talked about this show before, we're not going to cover everything that we covered last time. You know, we aren't going to talk about every single character. We just don't have time to talk about every single moment. But we're going to do our best to talk about the things that we really care about. And again, just like with every episode of Fanimated, we want to talk about why it's important to us and why we are fans and what this show means to us.
Mm-hmm.
So,
absolutely.
With that, you know, usually I start the podcast with a, you know, where does this media fit into our lives and you know, what's our history with it? But as you can tell, we're already big fans. And if you want to hear the full answer to that question, listen to the other episode. And we're even going to skip talking about every single character.
There are a lot of characters in this show.
So many. Like, even in the original, there's a lot. Mm-hmm. And this one, you literally meet every single Soma.
It's true. And what's insane about this anime is that they all have development. Like, what?
Yes. So, it is crazy how many characters there are, and yet every single one of them gets, like, a time to shine.
Yeah, gets their own arc. Like,
their own arc, yes. It's incredible. It's really, really absolute impossibility, and yet here it is. So I think, you know, to start off, let's like focus on just a few characters. And I don't know, I feel like we should start with one of the main trio.
Sure. Kyo?
Yeah. Okay. Because he's your favorite?
Yeah.
Yeah. So for Kyo, Emma, like what's maybe start out like what's the biggest difference between Kyo in the original Fruits Basket and Kyo in this reboot?
Yeah, so with Kyo in the original, we still have our angry, angsty boy. And I will say that, and this kind of ties into Yuki as well, but Yuki, and Toru end up spending a lot more time together in the original. You always see the three of them together, kind of gets you in that love triangle zone, and you're like, oh my god, they're both so wonderful. I don't know who I choose, but obviously Kyo. In this storyline with the reboot, not only do we have our angry, angsty boy, but there is so much more development that we see from Kyo's character. You really see, like, not only his anger mellow out and to see him mature over time, but you see him, like, start to care about people more, even if it's not, like, in like, I'm gonna smile and shake your hand kind of way. But you start to notice these subtle differences of him caring. And what I also notice about Kyo is that we get a lot of his backstory. And that backstory not only concerns like his mother's passing and his father rejecting him, but you also get to see like him face his father, which is, oh my gosh. I mean, that scene at the end of the show, so I'm like skipping way to the end.
Yep.
But
spoilers.
I mean, yes, you heard it here. But there is a scene between him and his father that I just found so, like, it was both powerful and haunting because his dad is awful. He is throwing his anger towards Kyo because he blames Kyo for his mother's suicide. And it's just so haunting because his eyes are just full of rage, and you just know that it's just so much more than blaming it on Kyo. Like, this man, he is only living, like, his anger is the only thing keeping him alive. And yet, when Kyo faces him, it's not like, I'm going to prove you wrong, or I'm going to tell you that was right always, or I hate you. Like, I'm here to say that I'm angry at you too. Like, it was nothing of that sort, but it was just like, I'm here to acknowledge like who I am, and you are not going to hold like a fist over my head. Like, you're not going to have authority over my life. I know who I am, and I'm moving on. And he's choosing to be happy because, oh my gosh, I could go on. But like, what Kyo battles with a lot is that he doesn't feel like he deserves to be happy. Mm-hmm. He feels that he doesn't deserve to try new things or aim for certain goals because he's not going to be able to accomplish them anyway.
And everyone in his life puts so much, not everyone, we'll see the few like stars in his life, but definitely from the moment he was born, a lot of guilt and shame just like poured on him. Mm-hmm. And he carries that throughout his whole life. Right.
He carries that burden with him. And so what's beautiful is that even though he felt like he could never be happy, because also like he in this Soma family is destined to be put in a cage once he graduates high school and live the rest of his days in a jail cell. Like, he has no hope. But by the end of the series, he has fallen in love with Toru, and he has hope for himself. And even though like it doesn't seem possible, like he's gonna hope for the best even in such a horrible circumstance. So we get to see a lot more of Kyo's development. And then the other thing I wanted to touch on with Kyo is not only do we see the interaction with his dad, but part of Kyo's backstory is his interaction with Toru's mom.
Yes. That's such a huge piece that I absolutely love. Like, throughout the series, you get so many different perspectives on who Toru's mom was, because she, a big, catalyst in Toru's story is that her mother passed away right before the beginning of this series. And we get so many insights into who her mom was by so many other people. And it's not till the end that we realize that Kyo knew her too. And Kyo has these other memories of her and like other interactions. And she was such an important part of not only Toru's life, but his as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're all, the main trio is actually all connected, like, in such random ways. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes their relationship a little extra special, is that, they really were all connected at some point, and now they're reconnecting. They just weren't aware of it. So with Kyo, he interacted with Toru's mom when he was a little kid. Like, she kind of hung out with him and chatted with him, and she talked about Toru as a little girl to him and was like, please protect my daughter. Just telling him as a little guy to give him something to like fight for, have a little purpose. And when Kyo grew up, though, he was actually the witness when Toru's mom died. She was hit by a car and killed. And in that moment, he battles because he recognizes her and he wants to push her out of the way. But also, he is just so full of anxiety because the moment he touches her, he knows he's going to turn into a cat. And then the rest of the public will be freaked out and have to get their memories erased and all these circumstances that follow up.
And again, he has spent his entire life being told by the rest of the Soma family that especially his transformation is a curse and is horrible and monstrous. And like, it's almost, it is such a deep instinctual reaction to not want that to happen ever.
Right. He has to constantly be in hiding because his monster form is so disgusting. And folks, I mean, we've mentioned it before, but like he does turn into the cat. That's a zodiac animal, but he's also got the bracelet on him that when it comes off, he turns into this really crazy monster. So with that said, yeah, he's dealing with that constant burden of like, I can't be seen by society. And so because of that traumatic experience, in his head, he thinks that Toru's mom will never forgive him because like he thought he heard something, but as Toru's mom was dying, she was thinking of something else. Miscommunication, classic story plot. But anyway, so he's got that in his mind. And so watching this for the second time was crazy because you're like, oh my gosh. Like, from the moment that Kyo met Toru, when she stepped into the Soma house after being homeless, like, he knew who she was.
Exactly.
And he walked with that the whole time. Blows me away.
Absolutely wild.
Yeah. Like, he was carrying that all inside of him. That burden, that guilt. Even though he didn't do anything wrong.
No.
Like, he's been put through so much. But he's still taking it all on him because that's what he knows.
Yes. Like, he has been a victim his whole life, but he's been blamed as a victim his whole life. Like, it's always his fault. It's because he's got the curse or whatever. Except for he puts a little bit of the blame on Yuki.
Yes. It's really easy to be angry at Yuki for him.
Yeah. Because in the original Chinese zodiac story, at least a lot of them, when all the animals are going to see, the Lord, the cat,
god.
the god, the rat basically tells the cat that, it's tomorrow, it's not today or whatever, and the cat takes a nap and misses it. So there's that. But then there's also the fact that, like, Yuki and Kyo, like, and in the original series, they talk about this too, how they both kind of envy each other for different reasons. But, just one of the the biggest difference about this reboot series for me is just the characters and how deep they go with everyone. And with Yuki and Kyo is the same, because not only do they admire each other and what each other can do, right? Like, because Yuki is part of the Soma clan and like part of the esteemed, privileged group that Kyo wants to be a part of. Kyo's always ostracized, but then like Yuki, of course, always wants to be like Kyo because he can fit into normal people better and all this stuff, right? They both want to be like each other, which is why they hate each other.
Yep. And beat each other up all the time.
Beat each other up constantly, but also because Kyo has been given an ultimatum by the head of the family, Akito, that if Kyo can beat Yuki in a fight, then he doesn't have to be put in his prison.
Right.
Whoa.
So now Kyo's on a mission.
Kyo is on a mission to beat Yuki. But of course, he never does.
Right. His anger gets the best of him, let's be honest.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because, like, Kyo is constantly at a dojo.
Right.
He that is what he loves to do. Like, he gets a lot of his anger out in his fighting, and yet he can't seem to beat Yuki.
Yuki just has a cool head.
That's true. He's got a hot head, so.
Exactly. So of course I really love Yuki and Kyo as rivals. And kind of transitioning into Yuki. And you mentioned this too, but I'll just say, like, again, the trio is different in the reboot. And that's one of the things that sticks out for me the most comparing them. Because in the original series, Kyo, Yuki, and Toru are like that. You cannot have one without the others.
Yeah, they're always together.
Yeah, they're always together. And although they fight, Yuki and Kyo fight, it's still just kind of like, but they're there for each other. And even at the end of this series, where Kyo transforms into his monstrous form, a huge, huge difference is that Yuki goes with Toru to calm him down. And in this series, this happens at the end of season 1, and Yuki doesn't go with Toru. It's just Toru going after Kyo, which has a completely different tone.
Yes.
Completely different. And just that specific change, it is so huge for me because, like, I always really loved, like, Yuki and Toru going after Kyo, and they all go home together. And Yuki is the one being there too. Like, yes, we fight, but at least we're like together at this moment, right? And like that change basically tells you all you need to know about like who Yuki and Kyo are in this series, in the true series, in the reboot. Because Yuki can't actually reach Kyo, in that same way Toru can. And this is about Toru being the only one, like, to truly accept him for who he is.
Right.
It's huge. It's huge.
Yeah. Like you said, it's a very different tone. And I think that both are fascinating. Like, it's hard for me to choose which one I like better because, with the reboot, I see that moment as like Yuki being like, Kyo needs to know that Toru can face him and be comfortable with him even in this state. Like, he needs to understand and face Toru even in the state he's in. So, and that's a very vulnerable place for him. So I think it was like a way of Yuki being supportive, but just from a distance. And then, in the original, we have him being supportive right up front. So I don't know. I don't know which one I like better, but they're just both interesting takes.
Yes. Yeah. I get a little sad because I do like the trio as a whole.
Sure.
And even towards the end of the reboot when Yuki and Kyo... I'll talk about that moment in a second because, like, it's one of my favorite moments. I just really like them, okay? I really like their relationship.
Fun and nice. Who doesn't?
And, like, at the end of the reboot series, like, Toru's in the hospital and Kyo and Yuki are at home, and Kyo's been sulking like he does. And Yuki and him get into another fight, and it's the best because
it is so good.
because they're basically like finally talking to each other, even though they all are also like beating each other up, like,
right.
And they're finally opening up, like, you wanted to be like me, I wanted to be like you, and like, it's so good because after 3 seasons, they're finally releasing all this pent up like feelings for each other, and like. And finally being like, they're both idiots. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it's such a good scene. And of course, like, Kyo, I love the line because Kyo is like talking about how much he admires Yuki. And then, you know, Yuki's like, you need to go to Toru, whatever. It's like, someone you admire just told you, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right.
That line of like, okay, you admire me, then like,
Listen to me.
Yeah, you need to go see Toru. And that's what incentivized Kyo to actually go see Toru after her accident. But, it's so good. I love them. Good. They're just like, they're pros, man.
It's true. I also love that moment because, yeah, as they're like fighting, like beating each other up and yelling at each other, like Yuki's also like kind of screaming encouragement in a sense. Because he's like, you need to go to Toru. Stop sulking because she needs you and you're being dumb right now. And like,
yes.
It's such an amazing dynamic. Like, these boys are such idiots and yet they love each other so much.
Exactly.
Like, they're there for each other. They just don't want to admit it.
Yes, that's it. They're throwing out like yeah, like kind words in between throwing punches. Like, it's so good. It's so good.
I will say with the reboot, I do miss a lot of the trio interactions because, you know, with the reboot, we've got them really in season 1, you see the most of them. And then, like, by the end of season 1, you're like, oh, Kyo and Toru, definitely a thing. Sorry,
for sure.
Yuki. You know, it's a lot more evident, a lot more clear.
Yeah.
But then as the next season goes on, like, Kyo starts to form, like, well, he doesn't really have so much of a group. It's more like Toru and her friends. And Yuki starts to form his own friend group, like, with the student council. So, like, they're kind of off hanging out in their own groups.
Exactly. Like, it really isn't the trio so much as, like, they just happen to be in the same house. You know what I mean? But that's what I love about Yuki's further developed story is that he finally is able to make friends on his own.
I love that.
Because, like, he has always been very admired by people. Like, he's very charismatic and, you know, handsome and whatever. But it's mostly just because, like, he admits this himself, like, am I just doing it for people to like me? Like, he has constructed a persona at school so that he is both protected from people and also everyone likes him. You know what I mean? It's like that. He definitely, at the beginning of the series, has that, like, you know, he doesn't ever show too many of his cards or whatever, you know? Like, he keeps everything very close to his chest because he's not able to, like, connect to people. He doesn't want to be open about it, I guess, you know? And Toru gives him the confidence to kind of try other things, you know, and to be able to interact with people. And so the big turning moment for him was accepting the position of being student body president.
Yeah. What I find really interesting is that looking at Yuki, like, you wouldn't think it at first, but he's a people pleaser. Like, he's struggling. Yes. Like, you don't think that by the way, like, he carries himself, like, he seems to be really confident and really, like, sure of his actions and everything. And not that he isn't, but really it's all to serve someone else.
Yes.
And by the end of the season, he has a lot of breakthrough of, like, no, I'm choosing my destiny. Kind of like Kyo. They're similar in that way.
Exactly. Oh, they are. They're both fighting to choose for themselves.
Exactly.
Oh, it's so good. And ultimately, isn't that what all the Somas are fighting for?
Yeah.
Wow, this show. But yeah, Yuki finally, like, makes his own friends on the student council, and they're all their own cast of characters. And his new BFF is just like hilarious, right? And then he also talk about ships later maybe, but like Machi is cute. Okay. And it's just like you watch him experience his own life and his own things, and it's just like I'm so proud of him. Okay. And then you also, the other thing that you get with Yuki's story is his relation to the head of the house, Akito. And it's very clearly shown his emotional, verbal, physical abuse, mostly very like mental and emotional, like just draining from Akito, because from a very, very young age, and this is something throughout all the Soma children who are cursed, like everyone, a lot of them at least, are treated in various horrible ways. But for Yuki, his parents basically used him as leverage for advancing in the society, like the politics of the house, kind of. And so he was kind of abandoned and left to just be Akito's playmate, basically, which was okay at first until Akito, and we'll talk about Akito later, starts to literally go mad and develop this god complex. And so Yuki basically became a toy for Akito to do as she pleases. And so for Yuki, like, and he's it's just like it hurts to watch, like, and Yuki is like left alone in this room all the time and like has no way out, etc. And thankfully Haru, another of the cursed Somas, basically begs Shigure to get him out of there, and so Yuki was able to go to a new school and live outside of the main estate. But it really did a number on Yuki's confidence. Like, that's where it comes from, right? Like, being abandoned by your parents, kind of, and then, like, just abandoned by Akito and everyone else in the house. Like, and just being told you're worthless. And, like, at one point, Yuki was severely ill, and Akito, that's just, like, such a heart-wrenching scene when Yuki is just sitting there and all frail, and Akito comes in and is just like, so are you gonna die? And like all this stuff. And I'm just like, dude, no. Anyway, so Yuki, just like everyone, obviously, like, has a lot to overcome, and like you can see it in his relationships with his new friends, like how much he's grown and how much he's able to keep going. And one more thing, as I ramble on and on and on about about Yuki, is another one of my favorite scenes is the second New Year's party. There are two in the course of the series, but the second one is when Yuki like actually confronts Akito. Like, throughout the series, you see how much power Akito has over Yuki. Like, Yuki is automatically in fear mode, fight or flight response whenever Akito is around. Akito is able to do whatever she wants to anyone. But especially with Yuki, like, because of there's that history there, Yuki can't handle it. Understandably so. And in that second New Year's, like, Yuki, first off, actually goes, because he doesn't go that first time that we see it. But also, I forget exactly what Yuki says, but it's basically like Yuki puts up a boundary, right? Mm-hmm. And we see Akito do this several times, but Akito does not accept other people's boundaries. And Akito hits Yuki with a vase.
Yep.
Hello. And like, whoa. But he was able to do it. Like, Yuki was able to stand up for himself for the first time, really, to Akito. And of course, Akito cannot accept that as reality. But, and then later too, when Hattori is bandaging Yuki up, and he apologizes for not intervening when Akito was throwing her fit. And then Yuki says, well, that probably would have made it worse. And it's just like, that is such a abusive relationship. That's such a red flag, because every single like abusive relationship in the show is very well portrayed, like to the point of that it's like legit. Akito is legitimately scary. And like everything Akito says of like, you know, you want to paint me as the villain, or like Akito, even Kyo, it gives like, there's a part where Kyo's like, stop it, don't touch me, like again creating a boundary, and Akito is like, I don't take orders from you. So Akito always assumes people are property, like doesn't respect anybody else's boundaries, has a god complex, and like victim blames. And yeah, just of course that's like not even mentioning the actual like physical, verbal abuse that that you see throughout the show.
Right.
So Akito is absolutely terrifying.
Extremely terrifying. I was thinking about how all of the characters are dealing with trauma in some form, but all of them have been dehumanized in the way that they're treated. And so they are treated more like they're zodiac animals than they're humans, when in reality they are humans who happen to turn into animals here and there.
Exactly.
That they are being treated as the animals within, based on like the physical and verbal and emotional abuse, especially with Yuki's story. I mean, like with him sitting in that room with Akito, he's constantly just told how worthless and awful he is. And no wonder he develops into this people pleaser who's trying to just get everybody's affirmation. It's because like that's what his mind is trained to do. This is how I will survive. If I please this person, I will make it through to today. When in reality, like, you know, that is just making him more lonely and isolated inside. And so it's really beautiful when he does start to like, you know, create his own friend group with this student council and learn to, what I really love is when in student council, he starts to get a little like irritated and aggravated at his council members, because it's showing a little bit more of his human side. Like he's not just like, oh, I'm, you know, put together Yuki and we're going to do this great job, you guys. But instead, like you're seeing him like get irritated with like a person who's not doing their job, or, you know, so on and so forth. And that's what I really liked to see, like as he was growing throughout the show. It's just like, oh, there's more of the human side of him.
And he's not taking it. He's not just taking everything, right? Like he's standing up for something, whether that's like his feelings or whatever. Like when I forget his best friend's name, the vice president.
Yes. Glorious man.
Glorious man who's absolutely hilarious compared to Yuki. Like they're the complete opposites in the best ways. Manabe is fantastic, gold star. But like it's so wonderful. There's a moment where Yuki finally like actually yells at him. And it's just like they start like yelling at each other, and I'm just like, Yuki, yes, you needed this, like, but not of course they resolve by the end and it's fine, whatever. But it's more of like they're both yelling out of a passionate opinion, sort of.
Healthy conflict.
Yes, and it's just like, of course, it's a totally like dumb thing, but it's just like what they're actually like fighting about. But it's just like, yes, Yuki, express yourself,
right,
and stand up for yourself. And and so like all of that, like Yuki is my favorite, probably just because of that, because I relate to him a lot in a lot of those ways, and like just how uplifting it is to see a character who has gone through like some of the worst and is able to discover himself and who he is, and like be confident in that, and to like be able to stand up for himself.
Absolutely. I think in the reboot, a lot of the differences we see between the original and the reboot include also Akito, which you kind of already started to talk about. Akito, So do we want to just dive right in?
Let's go.
All right.
Let's go into the mind of this
so dark.
absolutely sociopathic character. Okay.
So, I mean, we've talked about Akito before on the previous Fruits Basket episode. But what is different in the reboot is, one, also, like many of the characters, so much more backstory. We are introduced to Akito's mother, and we see a flashback with her father. We also, in the original, I don't know that they ever said Akito was male or female, but I think it was implied that it was male.
Yes. And we are gonna use she, her pronouns because that is how she identifies at the end.
Yes. She is dressing as a male for societal reasons because she is the head of the family.
Because her mother was basically like, Akito was forced to be raised as a man.
As a man,
basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
But in this case, she identifies as she, her. And so that's like a whole other dynamic going on.
Right.
Because like this little girl is growing up being like, nope, you're gonna act like a boy would, whatever that means. You're gonna, follow these particular guidelines as the head of the family would, as a man would, etc. And so she's got, I always feel so complicated when I get to Akito because, one, Akito is completely terrifying and you're like, this is one of the most insane villains I've ever seen. But I also just like have this deep empathy for her too, because she has been through so much, and that doesn't obviously make what she's doing good. It does not excuse that whatsoever.
She stabbed someone, everybody.
Yeah.
No excuses.
No excuses. She's insane. So I'm not excusing her behavior, but I do feel for her because of her circumstances. Because imagine your father is basically like God, because he's got the zodiac spirit of the god, the head of the family. And so there's that big responsibility. And her mother is in love with her father dearly, like they love each other dearly. And when Akito comes into the world, it's not like now we're a family. No, it's like, oh, you're taking time away from the one I love. Which, that is just awful. That just makes me cringe when I think about that.
Because it is really complicated because, yes, Akito is so evil, and yet you empathize because she was raised by someone just as crazy.
Right. Oh, her mother's insane.
Absolutely insane.
Like, to think of, like, a mother who... I mean, this happens in the world, which is insane. But, like, to have a mother who is just like, I can't believe I have this baby in my life. She's taking up my husband's time. Like,
right.
What?
Like, she's super jealous of her own daughter.
Right.
And, like, it's wild.
You're like, what happened? What went wrong in the process of her mind that, like, disconnected her from that? But anyway, so that's just so just gut-wrenching, and like how, like, it's just awful. That's the whole circumstance. You just are like, oh my God, like, how could it get any worse? And so anyway, Akito's got this insane mother who hates her. And now her father has died. And her father adored her, loved her so much. Moon and stars, right?
It's like her mother and her father both contributed to her poor behavior in different ways. One from lack of love and one from too much.
Too much love.
Because her father, in contrast, was constantly feeding her the narrative that she is a god and that she's part of this special thing and she'll never be alone because she's got all of the zodiac spirits and blah 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 blah.
Right, because when her father dies, the spirit passes on to her.
And like it just increases her god complex in an insane amount.
And then you have the mother screaming over her that she's a horrible human being, that she shouldn't even exist. So Two very complex things going on.
And, like, the other unfortunate thing, right, is, like, Yuki, for example, was able to eventually leave, the Soma household and get away from his abuser. But Akito is still in the house and runs into her mom. And, like, her mom, like, there are some very jarring scenes where her mom is, like, and her are not doing great. And they get physical. Yeah, they get physically attacking each other and stuff. So, and yeah, just so not only there's the pressure of, like, being the god spirit for the zodiacs, also just, like, yeah, the actual pressure of being the head of the house and, like, all of this other stuff. Like, I can only imagine. And it's so hard. It's so hard.
And she always constantly feels that people want something from her and then they're going to abandon her.
Right.
Like, for example, she's given this box from her father, and it's a special gift that only she gets, and her mother is just crazy about what is in this box. Eventually we find out there's nothing in this box. Nope. Absolutely nothing. Or, like, her relationship with Shigure. Like, Shigure has, like, he loves Akito. It's a weird relationship. It's a really weird relationship. But, like, when he was mad at her, he slept with her mother. Like, yeah, it's terrible. Like, so she constantly feels like people are getting something from her and then are going to leave her. So, like, when all the characters in the story start to, like, find their freedom and learn how to live their life despite their trauma, she just goes into a fit of rage anytime that somebody has a moment, because she's just like, no, like, you're getting out of my control, you're getting out of my clutches, you're abandoning me.
She needs to be able to control everything.
Exactly.
And so throughout, as the series progresses and we find more and more people whose curses are breaking, she's absolutely, like, distraught. Yeah. She can't have everyone leave. And it's also kind of like because not only she's a spoiled rich kid, but also because she has these, like, supernatural connections to people, it kind of has given her an excuse to not learn how to be a proper human and relate to other people and, like, actually, like, do a little give and take in relationships, how it usually works. And instead it's just take.
Yeah, and we'll think about, like, how isolated she is in that compound to begin with. So she's not going out making relationships and taking care of people. Like, people take care of her. It's insane.
All I gotta say is I hope her and Shigure are happy together, because they can just go and do whatever weird shit they want to do.
They apparently really love each other, and that's great for them. It's a weird relationship, but, to each their own. To each their own.
What's great is they are both so wild that, they can just have each other, and I don't feel sorry for either of them. I do have a love and hate relationship with Shigure.
Yes.
Because, like, again, there's just so many different...
Hashtag manipulator.
Hashtag manipulator. Like, his whole motivation is basically to hurt Akito to get back at her, to revenge.
He's
and
the
like,
angstiest boy.
He's the angstiest.
And he's not a teenager.
Dude, okay. We've talked about this so much, like, when we were watching the show, but, like, the most mature person in this cast is Haru.
The one who, like, can go into extreme angry mode.
Yes, like, he's one of the youngest teenagers in the story, and he is more mature than any of the adults.
It's insane.
And Shigure, it's so interesting because in the original series, like, Shigure is the uncle who's basically part of the house where Toru and Kyo and Yuki are living. Like, that's his house, and he is basically kind of should be the, like, parental figure in this.
Should be is a great way to put it.
But he is not. And, like, in the original series, he was just, like, he was the comic relief.
Yeah, he was just goofy, constantly giving his editor a run for her money, like, which he still does.
And it is hilarious, and that's why I love him. But also, and I kind of like it too, where you slowly peel the layers from this character who isn't just comedic relief, but turns out is trying to pull all of the strings.
Yeah. Behind, like, every character,
Everyone
not
is
just
that.
Akito. Like, he is constantly behind something. And it's like, every time we would watch an episode, I'm like, oh my gosh, he knows about everything. How far back has he planned all these things?
Yes.
Like, and all for just his benefit.
Yes, exactly. Like, things end up, having consequences for other people too, but it's mostly like, well, he's motivated by what he wants, and what he wants is Akito.
Yeah.
So yeah, he wants to break the curse. Yeah, he wants to whatever. But the other thing is that he doesn't want to get his hands dirty. He never does anything himself.
Right.
He just manipulates other people into doing his work.
Yeah, which seems like more work to me. Like, I mean, I don't have personal experience, but like, it's just like, he goes through so many like loopholes and people to get to this destination, and it's just like, that was so complex and complicated. Like, I feel like you could have made that way easier just because you're mad at Akito because she's seeing somebody else.
It's because he's too prideful.
Yeah.
It's because both him and Akito, that's their fatal flaw, is their pride. And they both have it, and they're both stubborn. And so, of course, like, Shigure is doing all of this stuff and pulling the strings and blah, 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 blah. And then, like, because he's not gonna, like, walk up to Akito and do whatever. Like, they just both aren't, again, they're so prideful. It's like Kaguya-sama. Like, neither of them want to just admit, I love you.
Right. They can't do it. It hurts too much.
We have to, like, hurt each other first. Like, what?
Isn't it crazy how the mind works?
I don't know. But anyway, so I do kind of like Shigure because he is complex.
Well, I just think they're, like, young kids in love, in a sense. Like, it's a little more twisted, but...
It's very twisted.
But you think about how, like, I don't know, like, when you're younger, maybe you have experience with this, but, like, when you liked someone, you might have either, like, tried to, like, either tease them or not, like, directly, like, say anything, but you just, like, constantly, like banter back and forth or something, but, like, it was never ever direct, and, like, your friends would be like, oh my gosh, just say you like each other, like, and so I feel like they're just little stubborn kids.
They are.
And they don't know how to be adults.
They don't know how to be adults.
Akito because she's been isolated, and Shigure because he's lazy.
I think that's a good summary. All right, we have talked about a lot of characters, but we have yet to talk about the main character, our protagonist, Toru Honda. Wow. Toru is one of my favorite protagonists of anything ever.
Yes.
Like,
and she goes through such growth and change. Like, I mean, in the original, we see a lot of her development. Like, I remember we talked about, like, the rice ball analogy and how she always felt different. But, like, oh my gosh, this reboot went on a way different route.
Yeah, in the original, Toru, I don't think changes that much, really. I mean, Toru's purpose is to change other people, right?
Yep.
And that still is the case, like, in the reboot, right? Like, she is the catalyst, the start of the ripple effect, right? Mm-hmm. But you kind of start to find out, like, all of this work and all of these things, she has a bit of selfish motivation too. She just wants Kyo. Like, you know, she's struggling so hard to break the curse, not to be a good person or to save everyone else because she has pity or whatever. It's because she wants Kyo. Like, she wants Kyo to be happy. She wants Kyo to be free. Like, that's her direct motivation to do all these things, right? She also is just, like, an absolutely, like, angel of a human being. So, like,
of course.
so she does just have a heart and
she
care.
wants everybody's curse to be broken. She just particularly loves Kyo.
Right. Like, that's, like, this stronger motivation in her. But, like, wow, we get so much more of, like, what is hurting her and how she has to overcome a lot of things herself, just as much as all the Somas. Like, in the original series, it's like, and you know, for much of this reboot as well, you can think, oh yeah, she's just doing great. Like, yeah, she's grieving her mom. That's kind of sad, but it's like, Oh, no, 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 no. She has some major, like, how do I put it? She wants to be so independent. She doesn't think she can ask anyone for anything or rely on anyone. Mm-hmm. And it's really, like, tragic.
It is. I mean, here's a circumstance where we finally are introduced to her father figure in this series, which is really cool. I mean, we don't see a lot of him, but that definitely dives into who she has grown to be, because her father died when she was young, and like, she obviously had a relationship with him, but she was little, so it's not like she remembers a ton. But something that was spoken over her was just how much like, people would talk about, like, oh, is she like her father? Like, is she gonna remind her mother of her father? Because her mom, like, took grief really hard, as anyone would. And Toru is this little girl seeing her only parent now falling apart. She's just like, well, I gotta do something so that we can stay afloat. And a child should never have to be their parent's support. I realize that's not the case for everybody, and it's really sad and heartbreaking. But Toru had to be the support. Or rather, she didn't have to, but she chose to. Mm-hmm. Because, to be honest, I think her mother could have come to a point where she had to, in a sense, pull herself together and take care of her child. But that's not how things happen. Toru did step in and say, I'm going to help take care of mom and us, and also act kind of like dad so that she'll have a memory. So she's, like, more thinking about becoming her father and what her mother needs instead of just being herself.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's just, it's really sad to see. And then, like, as she grieves her mother, not only is she, like, trying to let go of that person she's become, but she just wants to learn to let go of her mother and move on to love. Because, yeah, it's like the grief of her mother is tying her back. Mm-hmm. It's like she feels obligated to continually remember her. And of course she loves her and she wants to, like anyone would, but, like, it's more of, like, if I don't, who will? And, you know, I've got to be the one who makes sure things are happening, that my family is taken care of. Like, she's constantly holding on to the picture of her mom. I got to take care of mom. But then eventually she gets to let go.
Yeah, eventually, like, she chooses Kyo over her mom.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite visuals in the reboot, is when I think it's when she's, like, in her coma stage, but she's thinking about her mom and holding her hand, and then eventually she let goes of her mother's hand, walks further, and joins up with Kyo and holds his hand and walks off. It's like a dreamy, like, stage. So I'm guessing I think it was when she was in her coma. But,
yeah, I don't remember.
But I really loved that visual, because it's not that she doesn't love her mom anymore. It's just she's choosing to choose life for herself, because she has lived others' lives. She's been her father for her mother. Right.
Finally, like, again, she's done so much for other people her whole life that, like, choosing Kyo is finally her choosing for herself. Mm-hmm. Like, that's her time to be selfish. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, because in her day-to-day life, she's constantly like, I don't want to be a burden. I want to just serve and help and do the best for everybody else. And that is just how she has trained her mind, is just like, I'm here to help others. My personality isn't important. Who I am as a person, that takes second row. You know?
Yeah. Her main objective is to, like you said, not be a burden on anyone. Mm-hmm. And that motivates her. It's like, she doesn't ask her friends for help. Like, when she's homeless, she doesn't ask. Like, she's always trying to work really hard so that she can afford going to school and finish school, and then she can live on her own and all this stuff, right? Like, she just wants to be independent and not be a burden on anyone. But it's, like, okay to ask for help, and, like, yes, we talk about so much about Toru changing all these people around her, but like Kyo changes her. Like Kyo is the one to be like, hey, you can be selfish every once in a while.
Yeah, that's true.
That's his line to her. Like,
I forgot about that. That's good. And then we also have the interaction of Toru and Akito, which, you know, Akito, obviously, like, as we mentioned, like, when things get out of her control, when she feels like she's been taken advantage and then her people abandon her, she gets into rage mode. And in the same way, yes, she'll sometimes lash it out on the Zodiac members themselves, but because Toru has been bringing hope and encouragement into these people's lives, she's like, there's an easy target. She's the one who's stirring up this chaos. And so she lashes out at Toru multiple times. And even though, like, she is so threatening, like, she tries to stab Toru at the end. You know, she's got the knife. She doesn't, thankfully.
She just cut her up a bit.
That's true.
Because, again, okay, we just a side note, like, I don't know, if someone, a deranged lady in the rain with a knife is coming after me, like, I would run away. And Toru's instinct is to, stay there and, like, comfort this crazy woman? I don't know.
That's the part where I struggled with, because I was like, how would any sane person do this? And even if it is empathy, I don't think it's wise. Like, that's like just kind of in the point where you're like, I don't know, just deluding yourself or something. But yeah, even though Akito is in this fit of rage, she is at her peak. Like, Toru still decides Akito needs somebody. She is lonely. She is hurting. I see the victim. I see the child who was hurt from a young age. And she just needs to be loved. And so Toru, she is so determined to stick by her side and be her friend, too. Not just even be on good terms. She wants to be her friend.
Yes.
And, I don't know. I that is, like, the only thing that I would think was a little too, like, needed to take longer, or like or us as the audience could imagine, like, eventually in the future they could be friends. It happened a little too suddenly for me, just because of how intense Akito is,
and because, like, by the end, like, Akito has been physically and verbally abusive to her already, and so it's like, Toru, you know what she's like. Why it's not like you just don't know that she's crazy. Like, you know that she's crazy, and not only have you heard it from other people, you've experienced it yourself, and yet you're not. It's basically what I'm trying to say is that, like, in real life, people, your safety is more important than the other person. Like, if someone is abusive to you in any way, like, you can have empathy for them, and you can understand where they're coming from, and you can understand what they're going through, but, like, you need to be in a safe place before you can help them. Okay?
Exactly.
And, like, Toru's actions should not be followed in this specific instance, because, like, what Toru could have done is go get Shigure. Because Shigure would be able to help this situation more.
Right. Yeah, he would understand Akito more and be able to approach her.
Yeah. And granted, I don't think he was in the house at that point. No, he wasn't. He was out and about. But anyway, so I just wanted to, that's just a caveat, because I want people to be like Toru, but not in that instance.
Yeah. I think the essence of the storytelling was to give us this idea that Toru is, like, choosing to see the good in her and knows that there's good in her. And so I think that's what was kind of trying to be portrayed. But yes, of course, if that was real life, please run away.
Yeah, and like, from, like, just a narrative, standpoint, it did feel very fast, the end of the last season. Like, end of the third season flies by because so much happened so quickly, and yeah, even after everything Akito has done, and even after like hurting Toru in that moment, Toru still reaches out. And yeah, and of course to her own detriment. Which, you know, I mean, to be honest, that's what Toru does the entire series, so I guess it shouldn't surprise me that Toru helps other people to her own detriment.
Yeah. To the point where she falls off a cliff.
She falls off a cliff, everybody.
Oh my gosh, when I saw those episodes for the first time, I was so shocked because, one, the original does not go into this plot whatsoever. Like, there's only one season, and we're kind of left hanging. But, you know, with 3 seasons, you've got a lot more plot happening. And Toru goes, like, she falls off a cliff, the same cliff that covered her tent.
In the very first episode. Yep, it all comes back around.
Full circle. And then she's on the ground, head bleeding, and goes into a coma, basically. And it just was so intense because it was nothing that I expected to happen.
No.
But, you know, she was okay. Don't worry about it.
It's okay. Kyo came. It's fine.
Yes. Oh, my gosh. I will say... It was so romantic when he kissed her on the ground, but at the same time, I was like, "Oh my God, get her to a doctor!"
Yeah, like there are higher priorities here. Please.
I love you, Kyo. Now let's move on.
Let's go. Okay. Oh man. Yeah. I'll say too, like comparing this to the original. I have always loved and still really, really love the ending of the original with Akito and Toru. It still ends with them, but of course Akito, this is one of Toru's only interactions with Akito in the original series, and Akito is basically original Akito, he is, from what I understand, like cursed to die young or something, and the big impact there is Toru, like it's the first one who actually like listens to him and is like, that and basically like has empathy and says, I'm so sorry, and is like, I'm so sorry that you didn't even get a choice in any of this, like of being the head of the house and all of those things. And I still, like, out of all of Fruits Basket media, that's still one of my favorite moments. And like I think too, one of the reasons I like that so much is because Akito in the original series, and maybe because we don't delve into it that deep, like he is more redeemable because it's definitely painted in a, you know, you are a victim of circumstance and are lashing out, which is true of Akito in the reboot, but like I guess we just have more opportunities to see Akito's poor management of her feelings, I guess.
We see a lot of evil happening, and then it's harder to feel that empathy.
Yeah. And another thing that this series does so well that we kind of have been mentioning, but like is so true of like abusive relationship, especially like one within the house, right? Is the inescapability of it. Like this series does a really good job of portraying just like portraying abuse in general, but also just that feeling of entrapment of like you can't get out. Right. And you are stuck with this person. Right. And like I just like I just feel that like brings me back to that place, right? Of that of feeling that way myself. And like because no matter what Yuki does, even when he tries to live it with Shigure, like he still has to go back to the main estate, and Akito this is like Akito goes out of her way to like find them, and like goes to the beach house and like whatever, does anything possible to like mess with their lives and try to control them and everything. And it's just like wow. No, it just gets me.
Right, because like how you talked about how it's this inescapable feeling, these characters are physically living off the estate, the Soma estate, but they have like the spiritual bond because they are the zodiac animals.
Yes.
So because of that tied curse, they literally can't escape.
Yes.
And it isn't until like, when their curse breaks, they all start crying because it's like kind of a grief, like you're letting go of what you've always known.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Oh wow. This is like we are always having revelations on Fanimated, but this is it. No, I found it. That's the metaphor, right? That is the breaking of the curse is the finally being free, right? Like I will never forget the first time like I genuinely was like, this abuser is not living in my house anymore. Like wild. You're suddenly like, you didn't even know that life could be like that. Like it is insane how crazy, how just like, because I don't even have words, but like, yeah, it's the same with the Soma curse, right? Because like it is a little bit of that grief, like of everything you've known is different now, and like, but also like this weight lifted off of you. And or like that grief of like this relationship won't ever be the way you want it to be. Yeah. But like once you're able to let go, whoa.
Yeah.
Whoa.
But what I also appreciated too was that when the curse broke for each of the characters and they started to cry, they weren't like overjoyous of like, oh my gosh, I'm free. Like it wasn't like extremely expressive or dramatic. It was very simple and like subtle, and I loved that because it was like when you have been in that kind of relationship and that's all you know, it doesn't just like your mind doesn't change like that. Like it takes time, it takes healing, and like I loved that subtlety because it was like, I mean, I'm still like the same, but I can tell something's different, and it's just like that little progression of, yes, they're literally, freed from the curse, but this is still how I've lived my life, and it's going to take a process for me to continue to understand what freedom is for me.
Right. Like the day-to-day realizations of like, oh, this little thing is different now, and this little thing, all of that. And like Momiji's curse breaking is one of my favorites, is because like, of course, Akito like runs to him, and he's just standing there and like and they're both just like, Akito is more distraught, but Momiji is pretty reserved and just like, I just need some time. Like he needs time to process it too. Like it's so good. Right. It's so good.
Exactly.
But yeah, wow. I really like that connection of just like how scary it is to be free.
Yeah.
Because you don't know who you are without that abuse.
Exactly. Like your whole identity has shifted, and it's a reworking of how your mind works.
Absolutely.
Or how you think. Which, another thing that I really appreciated about the reboot is that we got more of the story of the Zodiac and the creatures and how it all came to be. We won't tell the whole story, but like just the gist of it is God had created a bunch of animals because he was lonely, and they held banquets and they were the best of friends and it was good times. And when animals were about to die, he's like, oh my gosh, let's drink this elixir so that we'll stay together forever. Because he was
let's
grieved
make the promise.
Exactly, let's make a promise that we'll stick together. And what I loved about that story is that there was such a good intention behind the promise. Like the God just wanted the friends to be together forever. Like, like they reappear in different people, obviously. And he just, because he loved them so much. But the cat is the one who's dying first, that was so saddened when he realized he was given the elixir because he didn't want to take it. The cat was grieved because it was just like, yes, I love you and I'm so happy to have been your best friend, but I live my life for one life, and that's it. That's all we are given. That's all we're blessed with. And, you know, we can't keep holding on to something forever, because in the end, it's only like becomes a burden over time instead of something beautiful. The reason why we enjoy beautiful relationships, beautiful moments with family or friends or whoever, is because we have it for that time. And it's, you know, it's so in the present. This is all we have.
Right.
I'm getting emotional over it.
It's the beauty of our mortality.
But it's true. It's just like that moment with the cat like hit me so hard. I was just like, oh my gosh, like it's not that he had bad intention in creating that promise, but he didn't realize, let me just value what I have here, because yes, there's eternity, but it is better when it's shared in the moment instead of taking it out for a long time.
And it's that wisdom that makes the cat ostracized from everyone, because the cat objected to it.
Right.
And that's the reason in this story why the cat is not part of the zodiac. And it's like, oof.
And the cat was the wisest of them all.
'Tis true. So let's talk about how the curse is broken, because the show doesn't like give you a very clear-cut reason. And Emma and I have talked about a lot about this off recording. But like, where are you at with that now? Like, how do you? Yeah, is there a specific like throughout the series? Quick context: certain characters, their curse is released at different times, and then at the end, the rest of them, it all releases at the same time.
Right, because it's only like 3 or 4 characters who are released from the curse
Before everyone else.
Before everybody else.
Yes. And it's not given a very, this isn't Beauty and the Beast where, you know, true love's kiss breaks the spell or whatever, right? Like, it is very abstract. It's not laid out for you. So what's your interpretation? Because it could be anything.
It's so hard because we've thrown around so many theories, and each time we've been like, no, that wouldn't work because of this, or that wouldn't work because of this. We know that over time, this curse has weakened because, you know, like we have, instead of one of the characters turning into a rooster, instead they turn into a sparrow. Or another character turns into a seahorse instead of a dragon. And so we know that the curse is weakening, and maybe that's because, you know, the love and friendship at the beginning is not as strong as it once was, because clearly when you have a relationship with Akito, there's not a lot of love going around there. So we see it weakening, and for me, I'm still along the lines of like, it had to be like a personal moment with these characters who just started like experiencing freedom, where they either realized like they didn't need Akito or really anyone to be who they truly are. Either that, because like I think about Kurino and how he is the first one, and that was when he was like a teenager.
Yeah. Like
he didn't, like, it's so long before most of the story. But Kurino is just a very, like, I don't want to say simple guy, but he's pretty, like, chill. And, you know, I think he has always had this idea of, like, I'm just who I am, and, like, I'm here to help if you need it. But, like, he just gives me the persona that he's not desperate to please anyone or needing to do something in order to survive or live. Like, he is just, he's serving Akito out of the goodness of his heart, not because he has to. And so, whereas the rest of the characters are really facing, like, if I don't serve Akito in this way or do this, like, I'm getting punched in the face or whatever.
Or shoved out a window.
Yeah, that too. Great stuff. So part of me is just like, I think it might be a realization of like, I am who I am, and I'm not attached to, I don't need to serve Akito. I just do. So that's part of my idea. Or just like they go through some sort of experience where they like conquer a fear or, something that they've been struggling with. And then what I think with like the whole mass at the end breaking, I think it was like, throughout when you see like these characters start to develop and grow in who they are, and when the first couple break their curse, you see like little strands like coming off the big rope, like little strands poking up. And I'm like, as soon as you get a certain amount of little strands, like
it's easier
broken
to break
from a rope, it's easier for the whole thing to just snap.
Yes.
So that's why I think like after a few strands broke, then the whole thing broke. Hence why all of them just broke suddenly at the end.
I really like that idea. Like that's a really good way to think about it, especially since they used the rope or the cord metaphor throughout to represent the curse, and then when it breaks. I like that. I like that a lot with that mass exodus at the end. I feel like the only things I know for sure, well, that I feel pretty confident about, is that one, Shigure mentions, and I think this is this is the way I want to think about it at least, that this is the first time in their entire history that all of the zodiac spirits are alive at the same time.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So I think that for sure is a big important piece. Is that okay? They're like the curse, like that's a prerequisite for the curse breaking. Is that they all need to be alive at the same time, which they are. As far as like what exactly it is, I really don't know. But what I appreciate is that Kurino is one that broke outside of the plot of the series. Like, I appreciate that it's not just Toru is the answer, because if Kurino hadn't already broken his curse, like, I feel like that would be a really easy thing to do, is just say, well, Toru's the princess in this fairy tale and she breaks the curse, right?
Right.
But I like that it's like, yes, obviously she affects everyone around her and is a big part of like helping people have confidence and grow into who they need to be. But like,
huge catalyst.
Yeah, absolutely. But she isn't the magic key,
right?
Or that like I know that it's like, okay, it's the moment at the end when Toru and Kyo are finally like addressing their relationship, and that's kind of where things break. Which, granted, is like the most cinematic moment, right? When it's like they finally hug, and then it's like, you're not a cat?
You're not a cat. You didn't change. What?
Like, that is such a beautiful, satisfying moment.
I love the shock on their faces.
Oh,
This is
my
the best
goodness.
thing.
So good. But I like that. I like to think at least that it's not necessarily like true love wins the day or whatever, or that it's Toru, right, specifically that like, but more that Toru like can helped influence like Kyo to care about himself.
Yeah, and Yuki.
And for Yuki to have confidence in himself, yeah. Like for them to, like we said at the beginning, the things that they want really are just to choose for themselves who they are. And isn't that this whole show? Like even Akito like is forced to be a man, and she chooses to be a woman at the end, right? Like everyone's being forced into these.
Yeah, even Toru is struggling with that too.
Yeah, like,
and she's the catalyst.
Exactly, like every single person is struggling with who they're being told to be versus who they want to be. And so who knows? Maybe that's part of it. It's just like your self-identity and accepting that. But I don't know. It's just it's I just appreciate that the show maybe isn't as clear. And maybe I'll read the manga someday and like that's more clear in the manga, but I like that it's not clear because I like when things don't hand you stuff on a silver platter, like, and you can have, that's what's fun. You can
imagine what it might be.
Yeah, it's fun to ruminate, and it's fun to, like, well, what does it mean to us? And what does it mean to each viewer? And, like, it might be different for everyone. And that's what's cool about media, and that's why I like to talk about it.
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely different for everyone because, I mean, especially with the emotional journeys that these characters go on, like, there's so much you could pull from it. And you can dive into it and try and figure out all the clues and whatnot. And because we, like, while we watch this, we'd be like, oh, what about that moment? Like, that was a sign that the curse is weakening. And, like, you know, we'd point those things out. But at the end of the day, it's still muddy waters. You're not quite sure. And
yes,
I'm in the same boat. I really appreciate that it's not told because, yeah, maybe our brains would be a little more satisfied if we had a logical answer, but then that would, you know, prevent us from, like, using that other part of our brain that allows us to imagine and think up all these ideas and possibilities, which I love.
Absolutely.
That's good storytelling.
Good stuff. Oh, so good.
We love this show.
We love this show so much. We love the characters. I'll say my one fault with it is that Toru's mom is painted so pristinely as the most perfect person by everyone's retelling of her, and so we don't, and like, yeah, we see like her breaking down kind of after her husband's death a little bit, but we don't get to see a lot of her humanity, I guess. But to that I also say there is a prequel movie for the series, and I'm very excited to watch that.
You know, I wonder if they made Toru's mom seem perfect because, like, that is the identity that Toru latched on. And so it was emphasized by all these other people's perspective. And even if she wasn't a perfect human being, which I'm guessing she was not,
right?
Like, it points to that fact of she's making her an idol in her life. You know, there are things that we worship in life without realizing it because we invest into that. And for Toru, as we've talked about, her mother and her mother's needs is an idol in her life. Yeah. So, of course, she sees her as perfect, you know?
That's right. And it does make an interesting narrative point when she, like, is painted as this perfect person, and yet, like, that's what Toru is willing to toss to the side at the end, right? Like, Kyo is more important. I don't know.
Yeah. Like, I'm giving up what is such a good thing, but for something that is also good, but what I want now.
Yeah. And instead of the story that you tell in your head about this person, the real person that's right in front of you.
Was here in this moment.
Oh dear. So before we end, I just have to mention the openings and endings to this series.
Oh my god,
are literally perfect, and like
every single one,
snaps all around.
Beautiful,
like perfectly chosen, absolutely fantastic. I just still wish, like, my my little nerdy heart just wishes that somewhere, somehow, they were able to incorporate the original opening theme song.
That would have been fun.
Because, like, not like in this reboot, they got all of the original English voice actors to play their parts.
Oh yeah, we didn't even mention that. Isn't that insane? Like, after so many years, same voice actors. It's crazy, and they still sound the same age. It's great.
They do. It's wild.
I appreciate your talent so much.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's so good. So yeah. So that little part of me was just really wanting to hear that, but I understand that, you know, it's probably just copyrighted stuff or whatever. But boy, oh boy, that would have killed me.
That would have been so good. That would have... I mean, we were already in tears from this show.
Yeah.
But, like, that would have really put us over the edge.
Completely over the edge. Oh, my goodness.
We also have to... Quick mention, of course, since this is an animation podcast, that the biggest part of this reboot was its makeover and how it looked. The animation, absolutely gorgeous.
Stunning. Just... Oh, like... The lighting in some of the
That's
scenes.
what I was going to say. The lighting was so gorgeous.
It was so good. And, you know, of course, every anime has certain scenes they can pump more money into than others. But, like, the ones that they can, man, yeah, top tier.
I mean, granted, the old fruits basket is, it's pretty rough.
It's rough.
So anything is going to look pretty wonderful.
I remember when the first, like, images came out for it and the first trailers and stuff, I was just like... jaw on the floor, like, this, we get this
whole different anime.
Like, in general, I just have to say, like, we, like, as fans of this show, we got everything we could have wanted out of a reboot.
Yes,
like,
absolutely.
Truly.
Including closure.
Including closure. Including, and I forgot to mention this, and we're running out of time, but, like, including Machi.
Yuki's girlfriend.
Like, Yuki finally gets a girlfriend. It's so cute, and I love them. They're my favorite at the end. But, like, yeah, it's just like, what a time to be an anime fan. Like,
oh my gosh, it's everything we've ever wanted.
Yeah, it is just wild to me that they get, and maybe it's less wild to me now that you see reboots all over the place, but, like, to get a reboot almost 20 years after the original is crazy. Even this season, we have gotten a second season for The Devil is a Part-Timer, which is, like, 10 years old. Like, I don't know what, like, obviously you see this in a lot of media right now, right? Like, the reboots and the, you know, or Disney's remakes or whatever, but, like, as far as anime is concerned, I love it.
Yes. So good.
Especially if they're going to be this quality. Obviously not everything is, but wow. So good to be an animation fan.
Yeah. I mean, just watching this come out was incredible. Like, every episode gave me such joy, even if it was a difficult episode.
Oh, because yeah, for sure.
It's just, yeah, we don't get this chance a lot.
We don't. So there it is.
There it is.
We hope you enjoy Fruits Basket and enjoyed us talking about Fruits Basket.
Yes.
You can email us at fanimatedpodcast@gmail.com or reach out on Instagram and Facebook at fanimatedpodcast and tell me who your favorite Soma is. I would love to know. The music is written by Jamie Krause. The art is done by myself. My art Instagram is at CandorDraw. And yeah, this was just so much fun. I'm just
so delightful. I love Fruits Basket.
To finally gush about the reboot has been fantastic. So
this has been awesome.
Thank you. This has been great. So have a lovely day, everybody. Can I say that? Is that weird? I can never end
have a lovely
these.
Morning, afternoon, or evening.
Thank you for listening. We'll be back soon. And in the meantime, stay tuned.
And stay animated.
Okay, so who is your favorite Soma outside of the trio?
Momiji.
Ooh, that was a fast answer.
I mean, he is so precious and cute and, like, is just the kindest human being on the earth, and you're like, how are you so wonderful? And then he has a glow up.
Oh my gosh, his glow up.
He's a man. He, like, threatens Kion. Is like, hey, if you don't get your stuff together, I'm gonna take Toru.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, Momiji, you tell him, like, because I would ship you too as well.
Oh my gosh, though, same. The like, they would just, their babies would be rainbows. They're both such happy people.
Rainbows and unicorns.
Oh my gosh.